What if the world's most powerful jet isn't yours, even after you pay billions for it? That's the shocking truth behind the F-35. It's a flying masterpiece, yes, but a leash fully controlled by the United States. If Washington doesn't like what your country is doing, your jets could be grounded with one click. That's where Sweden's Gripen enters the game. It's cheaper, independent, and built to fight without US strings attached. So why are nations turning their backs on the F-35? And what makes the Gripen so dangerous to America's grip on global air power? Let's find out. Countries in Europe are waking up to a brutal truth. The power they thought they had might belong to the United States, and it all starts with how Washington has handled its so-called friends in the past, especially in the Trump years. Let's be real. Under Trump, NATO allies are treated less like partners and more like freeloaders. He repeatedly slammed NATO for not paying their fair share, even threatening to pull the US out entirely. That kind of rhetoric caused real fear, a fear that the financial market will avoid at all costs for better stability. If America's leadership can flip overnight, what does that mean for Europe's military safety, especially when most of their air power now runs on American software? The Greenland controversy in 2019 is a simple best example of it. When Trump tried to buy Greenland and Denmark said no, Trump cancelled a state visit. It showed how serious the US is about controlling strategic land and airspace. Now, with Trump's renewed interest in taking control of Greenland and recent visits by top US figures, including Second Lady Usha Vance and Trump's national security advisor, Mike Flynn, Denmark, which maintain administrative authority over Greenland, is deeply tied to the US through F-35 deals, America's most advanced jet. It had ordered 27 F-35s and is slowly phasing out its old fleet of F-16s. So, if Denmark ever pushed back too hard on the US, Washington could simply pull support or restrict access to vital parts. That same dependence exists across Europe. From Germany to Belgium, NATO nations are loading up on F-35s. Then there's US export control policies. Every country using F-35 is plugged into the US defense network. That means updates, repairs, software patches, all controlled by Washington. There's no clear evidence of a kill switch, but insiders like Joachim Schranshofer from Germany's Hensoldt say it's more than just a rumor. When your air force depends on jets that have an American hold, are you really independent? The F-35's high-tech edge comes from American-made systems like the jammers and PIDs or ESIPS pods. If the US stops sharing that tech or delays updates, the jets lose their battlefield advantage. And let's say a NATO country disagrees with the US. What then? Well, Ukraine gives us the answer. In March 2025, Trump suspended military intelligence sharing and used his military leverage to force a nation into obedience. The F-16s heading to Ukraine, gifted by European countries, suddenly became vulnerable. The Link 16 communication system, a secure network used for real-time data sharing and coordination with allied forces, was being removed by the US. Without Link 16, Ukrainian pilots were unable to track, target, and engage enemy aircraft. This technical gap left the jet exposed in high-risk airspace. Now apply that to Finland. With Russia on its doorstep, Finland joined NATO to strengthen its defense. But if Finland leans too far from Washington's liking, could the same thing happen to them? Germany's $9 billion F-35 deal is another perfect example. Once those jets arrive, nearly a quarter of Germany's fighter force will be American-made. If Trump decides Germany isn't playing ball, what's stopping the US from withholding critical support? Nothing. So here's the uncomfortable truth. The F-35 is a leash, and every country that buys it is handing the US whole control. Plus, with Trump regaining political momentum, nations tied to the F-35 program are watching nervously. This fear is pushing some countries to rethink their options, and one fighter that's quietly rising through the ranks is Sweden's Gripen. The Swedish Gripen might not be the superstar that the F-35 claims to be, but let's not be fooled. This aircraft is turning heads, flipping alliances, and making serious noise on the global stage. And the more they learn, the more they like what they see. Born in 1979 and first flown in 1988, the Gripen officially entered Swedish service in 1996. It was built to handle both air superiority and ground strikes with ease, including the ability to counter Russian air assaults, sink any hostile navy crossing the Baltic Sea, and carry out precision ground strikes. Over 300 Gripens have been built so far, and it's serving in the air forces of 7 countries, from Brazil to Thailand. Even NATO countries are taking notice. Hungary and Czech Republic are 2 NATO countries already flying Gripen. Let's talk performance. The Gripen E hits speeds of Mach 1.8, reaches altitudes of 50,000 feet, and can take off at a weight of 13 tons. Designed to cover vast areas, it uses external drop tanks without compromising its core performance. With 3 fuel tanks, it boasts a ferry range of up to 4,000 kilometers, and in an air-to-surface mission setup, it can strike targets within a 1,500-kilometer combat radius. On top of that, its NATO standard probe and drogue air-to-air refueling system gives it even more operational flexibility and extended mission endurance. But what makes the Gripen E dangerous isn't just how it flies, it's what it carries. This jet now supports a lethal combo of next-gen weapons like the Meteor missile, RBS-15 Mark IV Gungnir, and the Taurus cruise missile. First up is Taurus, a long-range cruise missile built for deep strikes. Developed by Taurus Systems GmbH, the Taurus can hit targets over 500 kilometers away. That's more than 300 miles. What makes it deadly is how it flies low, hugging the terrain to avoid radar detection, and quietly slips through enemy defenses. It carries a 480-kilogram dual-stage warhead that's made to destroy underground bunkers, command centers, and hardened structures. The precision is no joke either. With a guidance system that includes GPS, INS, terrain reference navigation, and an imaging infrared seeker, the missile has a circular error probable of just a few meters basically. It rarely misses. The Taurus is now integrated with Gripen, joining other jets like the Eurofighter Typhoon and South Korea's F-15K. Another game-changer on the Gripen is the Meteor missile, one of the world's top beyond visual range air-to-air missiles. Built by MBDA, this missile is used by top air forces across Europe. The Meteor is designed to take out fast, high-flying aircraft from extreme distances with a range of over 100 kilometers. And some say it can reach up to 200 kilometers, depending on the scenario. It travels at Mach 4+, 4 times the speed of sound, powered by a ramjet engine that keeps it fast all the way to the target. It also has an active radar seeker with mid-course updates and a massive no-escape zone, making it incredibly hard for enemies to dodge once it locks on. Lastly, there's the RBS-15 Mark IV Gungnir, a next-gen air-to-surface and anti-ship missile. Named after Odin's spear, Gungnir travels over 300 kilometers, uses a mix of inertial navigation, GPS, and radar guidance, and can be fired from land, sea, or air. Together, these 3 systems give the Gripen unmatched strike flexibility. However, that's not it. What sets the Gripen apart is its brainpower. Saab designed it for human-machine collaboration, meaning the plane acts like an extension of the pilot's mind. Thanks to its futuristic wide-area display, critical data is presented in an easy-to-read format, helping pilots make fast, smart choices. They even say the Gripen E has built-in AI. It can analyze and share data across multiple platforms, a level once reserved for the F-35. Its survivability is top-tier, with radar jamming, mimicry, towed decoys, and bright cloud capsules that disrupt enemy electronics. The Gripen E also carries electronic warfare systems made specifically to counter Russian defenses like the S-300 and S-400. It can jam, mislead, and send false signals, designed to give Russian systems a hard time. Even better, its modular avionics and open software make upgrades as easy as updating a smartphone. No need to replace the entire jet just to stay ahead. Now, let's get controversial. The Gripen does things the F-35 was supposed to do, but often fails to deliver. The Gripen was designed by Sweden with independence in mind. It requires lower infrastructure investment, can operate from remote highways or short airstrips, and doesn't depend heavily on US-controlled tech. And that's a big deal in today's unpredictable geopolitical world. The Gripen's software updates are managed in-house by Sweden's Saab. Now compare that to the F-35. Yes, it's a 5th-generation powerhouse packed with stealth, sensor fusion, and cutting-edge battlefield networking, but a closed, US-controlled system. The F-35 program is so tightly managed by the US that even allied nations can't touch certain parts of the aircraft's source code. Every update, every software patch, every repair request has to go through Lockheed Martin and, by extension, the Pentagon. Let's talk about data. The F-35 collects massive amounts of flight and mission data using its onboard systems and sends it back to the US via the Autonomic Logistics Information System, now being replaced by Odin. But even with Odin, the control remains centralized. Critics argue that this system allows the US to monitor and even limit how allied countries use the aircraft. In 2019, Turkey was removed from the F-35 program over political tensions. Meanwhile, Saab offers transfer of technology and local assembly of Gripen to buyer nations. For example, Brazil co-producing them and training its engineers. And then there's the cost of this lock-in. The F-35A has a price tag of around $100 million per unit. But owning the jet isn't enough. You need the whole ecosystem: trained personnel, special runways, secure data links, and American maintenance contracts. You're married to the program, and getting out isn't cheap or easy. The Gripen E costs about $85 million per unit and is cheaper to operate, with a 2012 Janes report estimating $4,700 per flight hour compared to $7,000 for the F-16. Over a 30 to 40 year life cycle, the Gripen E totals around $250 to $300 million per aircraft, while the F-35A ranges between $400 to $500 million. That's a massive gap, and one that adds up quickly. Lastly, deployment is where the Gripen shows off. It's quick, it's light, and it doesn't need a huge runway. It can land on a highway, refuel, and rearm with just 6 crew members. Western analysts, including Britain's Royal United Services Institute, suggested the Gripen CD as the best option for Ukraine, above even the F-16s. Why? Because it was made for harsh conditions. That means it's perfect for smaller countries, or for NATO missions, where the US might hesitate to send its trillion-dollar stealth fleet. The Gripen is turning heads for all the right and controversial reasons. Countries are looking for performance, politics, and practicality. And the Gripen? It checks all 3 boxes, whether the defense industry likes it or not. So what are countries choosing between? Let's start with Canada. The country signed a huge $19 billion deal in 2023 to buy 88 F-35s. But many Canadians still remember when US President Donald Trump slapped tariffs on Canadian goods and mocked Canada as America's 51st state. Plus, in March 2025, with Trump threatening annexation and public outrage growing, Canada's defense minister admitted they were reconsidering the deal. The Gripen, which was a finalist in the competition, is now back in the running. Saab had even offered to build and maintain those jets inside Canada. Then there's Portugal, another NATO ally that's been watching US politics closely and not liking what it sees. The F-35 was originally Portugal's top pick to replace its aging F-16s. They even began preparing for that transition. But now, Lisbon is making a U-turn. According to Defense Minister Nuno Melo, Portugal is now focused on European-made jets, especially the Rafale, Eurofighter Typhoon, and yes, the Gripen. Why the sudden change? Because, like Canada, Portugal is scared. The cost of the F-35 is around $33,000 just to fly it for 1 hour. Add in the software control the US holds, and the Gripen starts to look a whole lot smarter. Austria is another example. Back in the 90s, they had Gripen on their radar. They eventually went with Eurofighter Typhoons, but now those jets are outdated and expensive to maintain. Austria is now possibly going back to Gripen. Bulgaria's case might be the most dramatic. They initially leaned toward Gripen because of its flexible leasing deals and affordability. In 2017, they plan to buy 8 Gripens for around $834 million. The US countered with older F-16s for nearly double the price. After a lot of political tug-of-war, Bulgaria chose the F-16V. However, the president vetoed the deal before Parliament overruled him. Fast forward to 2022, and Sweden was still offering Gripens with quicker delivery and lease options, showing Bulgaria isn't fully convinced by Lockheed Martin's offerings. Denmark's case brings in a whole new level of controversy. Despite Saab's strong Gripen EF bid and Denmark's close evaluation, they chose the F-35 in 2016. But reports later showed that the US allegedly spied on other bidders and Danish ministries to secure the deal. And don't forget Finland. Gripen competed in Finland's massive HX fighter program, but lost to the F-35. Still, many in Finland praised Gripen's lower operational cost and better fit for Arctic missions. And this is where things get even more interesting. While some are moving toward Gripen, others who once picked the F-35 are having regrets or second thoughts. Norway, Denmark, and Finland all chose the F-35 over the Gripen, but they're now tied into expensive deals with strict US controls. And even Belgium, which is still buying more F-35s, is demanding that they be built in Italy, not the US, to reduce dependency. Now, for the other countries, Sweden is doubling down on its jet, ordering 60 Gripen E aircraft. Brazil followed with 36 of the same model. South Africa has stuck with its 28 Gripens, and they're not looking to switch. Even in Europe, the shift is clear. The Czech Republic extended its lease on 14 Gripens until 2027. Hungary owns 14 and just ordered 4 more. On the other side, the Gripen is gaining new fans. In Latin America, Colombia just announced that it's picking the Gripen to replace its outdated K-4s. Ecuador is also in talks, and even Ukraine, in the middle of a brutal war, is looking into Gripens to replace its Soviet-era fighters. However, things are not going as smoothly as expected. You'd think choosing a European jet like Sweden's Gripen would help countries avoid US control, but not so fast. There is another controversy they had to deal with. The Gripen E runs on the RM-16 engine, a customized version of the US-made General Electric F414, while Saab already has all the necessary licenses to export the Gripen with its current US engine. This still puts Europe in a very awkward spot of getting a non-American fighter jet, but still needing US parts. The continent wants independence after the Trump kill switch drama. Good news, Sweden is reportedly exploring options to eventually replace it with a French engine. The Gripen was built with this kind of modularity in mind. Unlike the F-35's locked-down system, the Gripen can swap out core components like engines without redesigning the entire aircraft. If Sweden does move ahead with a non-US engine, it could flip the entire fighter jet market. So when we talk about why countries are changing sides, from F-35 to Gripen, this is the real reason. It's about freedom. A fighter jet is a tool of national power. If a country can't fully control its planes, can it defend itself? That's the big question countries are asking. The Gripen could become the fighter jet of choice for countries that want sovereignty over their skies, and not in Washington's hands. If Ukraine had been flying Gripens over Donbas instead of waiting months for F-16s and then being forced to fly without key support systems, the story might have looked very different. Gripens are made for the kind of war Ukraine is fighting: fast, mobile, and resistant to electronic threats. Plus, Sweden's export rules don't come with geopolitical baggage. That kind of freedom is priceless. Whether it's budget, politics, or battlefield flexibility, this shift is real and growing. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into global defense, and drop a comment. Which jet would you choose, Gripen or F-35? Let's talk about it below.